because I save these to my computer and upload them to YouTube later. Okay, so we got the Nimzovich-Larsen. Now, back in '73, I had a pamphlet on this opening, and they mentioned the various setups that black could do, and the recommendation here is we play this like a Nimzo-Indian reversed. Okay. Okay, well this is playable. Black does have the option though to play A6 now, so that's why I think Bishop B5 is more appropriate. Now he can still play this, and it's like the same-ish Nimzo-Indian with colors reversed. Now, you don't have to play this. You can still play F4 if you want. Okay, it's like a combination Nimzovich bird, but I'm just saying this is the Nimzovich with colors reversed, and white has an extra tempo in hand, and black usually doesn't have this bishop fianchettoed so quickly, if he even does at all, in the same-ish. So from a positional point of view, black could play this, and I've seen variants of this with colors reversed that I'm experienced with. Let me give you an example. A3, and that stops the pin. Or see, on E6 you can still play A3 and keep this bishop out. And let's see, I'm trying to remember something here. I could dig through my score sheets. I had a correspondence game that opened something like this. I guess you can still do this. Don't quite remember the line, but I just want to point out that in this particular game, black now has the option to play A6, and he doesn't. And he doesn't play bishop B5, so black has the option to play A6, and he doesn't. So here white says, I'm not going to pin you. So maybe after all, so maybe white came out okay by, or black came out okay by not playing A6. That would have cost a tempo. I'm just illustrating things that I'm familiar with. Okay, now the knight can go to E5 here. He doesn't, which is fine. Now, get to decide which way do we want to develop this bishop. Do we want it fianchettoed, or do we want it on E7? He wants it on E7. Now he doesn't fear this because he'll have a file to attack along. Now, I don't know. This might tempt black to start thinking about castling queenside and starting a pawn storm attack. See, this move does create weaknesses in white's position. G3, and then, you know, the potential pawn storm is coming if black castles long. You know, we're going to get tension created very quickly. Let's see what happens. He took. Okay, now this knight's still out of play. This bishop's still out of play. Black should play bishop E7, then make up his mind next move which side of the board he wants to cast on. Okay, so I'm expecting black to castle long here. He does have attacking chances on the king side. He didn't yet. Now white's going to gambit a pawn. Don't understand that. So, thank you very much. Okay, this is very odd. He wants to have the two bishops against the two knights.
Check.
Okay, so at the price of a pawn, white has two bishops versus two knights. No longer wise for black to castle queenside. He'd be casting right into an attack. Now, there's a game I want to research. I'll have to find it. Maybe I'll share it. But I want to find, I need to find the copy of the book, which I no longer own. It was, Reuben Fine wrote it, and it had two titles. I can't remember which one came first. One was Lessons from My Games, and the other one was Passion for Chess. Now, Reuben Fine was at his peak, maybe within the top five, definitely within the top five chess players in the world. And you could even argue he might have been the best chess player in the world. What got in the way of his title hopes was World War II. You need to be well versed in a player. I think you need a little history. Fine came into prominence in the 30s, New York chess scene, and the other contemporaries that were coming up along with him were like Rzhevsky, Botvinnik, Paul Carey's. Now, Yakin was still world champion, but he was in decline, and he lost his match to Max Erva in 35 and regained it in 37. In the Avro tournament, AVRO, don't ask me what it stands for. It was a playoff tournament to determine who would play Alyakin for the World Championship. And I think he tied for Carey's, but Carey's won the tie breaks, but then the match never happened, World War II. Then in 48, 2 years after Alyakin died, they had a tournament for the World Championship. The top players participated, and Botvinnik ended up winning it. But Fine chose not to play because of his career as a psychologist. And would he have won? I don't know. I would say probably not. Botvinnik had clearly been working on his game. But anyway, make a long story short, back to what I'm talking about, why I brought Reuben Fine up. In that book, he had I'm going off memory because I read this like 46 years ago. I remember one chapter was, I take Kupchak's pawn. So he accepted somebody's gambit. But he had a game against Capablanca when Fine was on the way up, but he wasn't Grandmaster strength. He was maybe 2200 strength. And the game was played in a simul, and Fine had the two bishops against Kappa's two knights, and Kappa had an extra pawn. And it was a beautiful game for the bishops, and I don't know how accurate Kappa played, but Fine used his two bishops with mighty effect and won the game. So it's probably on the databases somewhere, but it's in his book because I know it. I read it. Let's see what happens if the two bishops can work. But I just looking at one thing. Look at the clock. Wow. He's used. I don't know what moves did he spend so much time on. I mean, I'm delighted he spent his time. Let's see. I saw a big. Here we go. Okay. So 15 minutes to castle. Probably a little too much, but. And then another 10 minutes on that move. A couple of minutes, 3 minutes on that one.
Check.
So, the biggest problem that White has here is his clock. I guess Black could grab another pawn, but that queen could get in trouble. Let's see what happens. Castles. So, can't take that pawn. The bishop will be loose to the skewer. Well, there's so much for the idea of going into two bishops versus two knights ending. He just decides he's going to go into a queen and rook ending and give you a bunch of double pawns. But I don't know. This isn't. I don't think this is a good choice. Black is just left with a queenside pawn majority, a minor weakness on f6. White doesn't really have open lines for his rooks. Maybe he can get him on the c file and play for something like this, but I don't know. Black's got to be better here. Okay, trying to open up a line for the rook, but just simply e5. Yep. And, you know, white doesn't have direct approach. His own pawn on h3 is in the way, right? And so black says, oh, I want to use that g file. There goes the pawn majority, and now that's just going to allow a passed pawn. Well, I wouldn't have taken there. Let's see. I would have just pushed. See, the logic being that if he takes, I'm not too worried about pawn going into f6 at some point, but he's going to have to deal with his queen first before he can do any of that. So I would have played c4. Now he plays c4. Now, white's trying to find some way to negotiate an attack. Okay, keeping the pressure here. Maybe trying for this and this, but we have to be careful. We can't give up g2. Meanwhile, black has stolen another pawn. So, you know, this attack has to work for white or it's bust. And black is well centralized. And, you know, white's not finding an attack, and black is just getting ready to liquidate a little bit and run his c pawn.
Check. Check.
And before he grabs that, he grabs another pawn. Okay, so 3 pawns up.
Check.
And now it's mate next move. So clearly white was too short a time to survive. So I'm thinking that white's trouble here was sacking that, starting to sack the pawns, and then liquidating both bishops. He had some chances. Okay, let's see. So move 10, go back 42. Okay. You know, what's wrong with this? Let's just maintain material equality. We've got the 2 bishops. You know, no need to sack. Because if you're going to sack, you know, you're sacking for something. You know, here he was sacking. It appears that he's sacking to have the 2 bishops versus the 2 knights. And, you know, as soon as he gets it, as soon as he acquires that, he gives up that, what he appeared to give up a pawn to play for. So, you know, whatever method is Kappa or Rubin Fine used against Kappa, you know, he could try that. You know, restrict the knights, use your bishops to dominate. I had an interesting game. I have to dig it up. I'm not going to show it now. I had an interesting game against a computer here on ICC some dozen years or so ago, where I let it get the 2 bishops and I had the 2 knights, and I actually got down to the ending, and it was apparently defendable, but those bishops, man, they're killer. And a computer running the show, it's even better. I mean, it's a 2600 computer, crafty, and I was close to having a draw. I almost drew it in the middle game. It kept repeating. It kept repeating without repeating. It wouldn't move a pawn. And finally, like 1 or 2 moves before the 50 move rule would have come into effect, it moved a pawn. Then it started up again. The game went like 140 moves. I'll find that. I'll dig that one up. I have it on a PGN somewhere. Okay, so let's see. Let's stop this video.